Hello, class. This is Mr. Hart. Um, I'm not able to come to class today because I had to go to a meeting in another school, but I want to continue on with material so that we didn't get behind. And so I know we didn't have a chance to talk about the test, but we will talk about that on Thursday when I get back. Okay, but let's go ahead, pull out our notebooks, get ready to take notes just like any other day in class. I want us to get through the material. So please pay attention as we go through, and hopefully you can follow along. Okay, but so our last unit was on savings and banking. This unit is specifically on loans and purchases. Okay, so we've looked at the financial planning pyramid before. Okay, and I kind of just reworded it, redid it, so it's a little bit easier to see, a little bit clearer to understand. Okay, so you've seen this pyramid before, but it wasn't maybe labeled this way. But the idea is you start with some very basic tools and budgeting in order to get ready for your financial planning. Then you start to build some savings. After that, you start to make some larger purchases. You insure those purchases. You start to make some investments, and then hopefully the goal is that you start to invest in your retirement, and you can depend on that in the future. Okay, so as your wealth grows, you get more and more steps that you try to rely on in your financial pyramid. Okay, so if you have not written this down before, or if you'd like to write it down again, please go ahead and take a second to do that. Okay, and again, this is the same pyramid as before, same idea, but I've just kind of simplified the wording. Okay, so let's look at where we're at on this financial pyramid. Okay, so unit 2 was on tools and budgeting. Okay, things like calculating net worth, things like calculating cash flow. Okay, our last unit, unit 3, was on savings, right? Learning how to use the bank to build up a savings account and things like that. Okay, so we're moving on to purchases, and this is a large part of personal finance. Okay, we're going to spend a good 3 units on purchases because there's a lot of purchases we need to make, and they're very important purchases, things like buying a home, things like buying a car, okay, your education, that type of thing. So we want to make sure we understand how to appropriately buy things, how to take out loans, understand interest rates and things like that, so that we can be able to plan for our financial future. Okay, so we're on the purchases step, loans and purchases. Okay, alrighty, so we are going to talk about something with purchases that we call credit, because usually with a purchase, if you think about going to the store, for example, and you buy a Twinkie, let's say, down the store, okay, ideally, you just make that purchase with cash, right? Either use your debit card and just swipe the debit card, or you hand some cash to the cashier. There you go. You got your Twinkie. You made your purchase, right? Very simple. Okay, but we can't do this for all purchases. I mean, ideally, you would want all purchases to be paid beforehand, okay, with the full amount with saved cash. Okay, that would be ideal, right? Any type of purchase you need to make, your car you buy in cash, your house you buy in cash, unfortunately it's really hard to build up that much savings, okay? So when we're making larger purchases, okay, it's usually difficult to have that enough cash saved on hand, okay, or enough cash saved beforehand. So with those large purchases, we often have to use borrowed money, okay, that we will pay back later. That is a typo. There we go. Okay. With money that we'll pay back later, right? We have to borrow money that we don't have right now so we can still purchase the item, okay, and then we'll pay it back later for these very large amounts. Okay, that's the idea of a loan. We use a general word for this, though, that we call credit. Okay, so anytime you hear the word credit, that can mean any type of borrowed money, whether that's on a credit card or on a loan. Okay, credit is just any type of borrowed money that you have. Okay, so again, ideally, you don't want to use credit. You want to just have saved money on hand that you can, hand to whoever it is that you need to buy the item. But for these larger purchases, we usually can't save that much, and so we need to use credit. We have to use borrowed money. Okay, so here's our 2 vocabulary words that we want to talk about. I'll bold these so that we know. Oops. Bold these so that we know we want to write those down. So let's write down these 2 vocabulary words. Okay. So first of all, credit is the ability of a person to receive purchased items before payment is received. Okay, with trust that the payment will be made in the future. Basically buying an item before you actually have the money to buy it, right? You're borrowing the money. Okay, that's credit. Receiving the item before you've actually paid for it. Okay. So then the word debt comes directly from credit. So debt is the total amount of money that has yet to be paid back on items that were purchased with credit. And sorry for all the typos. Okay, so go ahead, take a second, write that down. Okay, so credit and debt very closely related. Okay, so credit is borrowing that money. Debt is how much you have yet to pay back. Okay, so a person that is in a lot of debt has borrowed a lot of money or has used a lot of credit. Okay, so again, ideally we want to stay out of debt, right? We don't want to use credit if we don't have to, but for some of these larger purchases, you're going to have to do that. Okay. Alrighty, so I'll give you about 30 more seconds to write that down. Okay. And so while you're writing that down, I want you to start thinking about the types of credit that you have seen. Okay, they usually fall into two categories. Okay. And one of the most common categories is a credit card. That's probably what people think of most, right? Credit card is something where you just pay with, just like a debit card, you swipe the card, it pays for something. But again, that's borrowed money. You're going to have to pay it back later. Okay, and then the other type of credit is a loan. Okay, so the two types of credit that you're going to see are loans and credit cards. Okay. So the two types of credit you'll see are loans and credit cards. So a loan is a form of credit, right? Borrowed money that is for a fixed amount for the purchasing of a specific asset or a specific item. Okay. So you don't have a loan that is changing in amounts, right? Your loan is for a specified amount. Okay. So for example, a car loan. When you go and buy a car, they say, okay, we need this much money for the car. You go to the bank and say, hey, I need a loan for such and such amount. Okay. You don't get to, change that amount over time. You are giving a very specific amount. My loan's for $1,400 or my loan's for $7,000, right? It's very fixed, right? You are giving a specific amount for a specific item that you're going to buy, okay? Things like education loans, right? You say, I need a $5,000 loan this semester to pay for tuition and things like that. Or a house loan, which we also call a mortgage. That is for the price of the house. Okay, so beforehand you've determined how much money you need. You go in and you get the loan. Okay, the other form of credit is a credit card. Okay, which is a physical card, just like a debit card, that can be used to purchase any item on credit. Okay, now this one does change, right? As you buy more items, you're using more credit, so the amount can change, which is why a lot of people get in trouble with credit cards because they don't realize how much they're borrowing. Okay. So loans are usually the safer type of credit because you have to determine beforehand how much you're going to spend or how much you need, whereas a credit card is usually a little bit more dangerous because you don't really know how much you're spending because you just go and buy as you need items. Okay, but again, both forms of credit, but usually if you have to use credit, ideally you want to use a loan before you use a credit card, okay, because the loan is predetermined. Okay, so we're going to focus for the first part of the unit on loans. We'll come back to credit cards later in the unit, but we're focusing on loans right now because we want to be able to calculate things like our monthly payment, how much interest we're going to have to pay on the loan, and things like that. Okay. So when we get a loan, there's three components of the loan that we need to know. Okay. So let's say you go into a bank and say, hey, I need a loan for my car. Okay. They're going to tell you or ask you for three things. Okay, so first of all, they'll ask you for the principal or the amount that the loan is for. Okay, so they'll say, well, how much is your car going to cost? You say, well, my car is going to cost $8,000. Okay, so your loan's principal or the initial amount that you need is $8,000. Okay, then they'll probably tell you, well, actually, the next thing you'll probably ask is, oh, I need the loan for about 5 years. That's usually a common amount for a car loan. So they'll tell you the maturity date, okay, or basically the date that the loan will be completely repaid. Okay, so basically it's a 5-year loan. You need to pay us back in 5 years. Okay, that's the maturity date, or the term of the loan is another way it's said. Okay, so after that, 5 years, your loan needs to be paid off. Okay, you're given a maturity date, and then the bank will tell you their annual percentage rate or APR on the loan. Okay, so you'll tell them these things and they'll say, hey, this is our APR or the amount of interest that you need to pay. Okay, And I can't believe I spelled paid that wrong that many times. Anyways, so you have to tell them how much the loan's for, how long the loan needs to be for, usually around 5 years for something like a car loan, and then the bank will tell you the APR for the loan, or how much interest they're going to charge on the loan each year. Okay. So you'd say, okay, I need a loan for $7,000. That's the principal. It's going to be a 5-year loan, so the term is 5 years, or the maturity date's 5 years down the road, and then the APR on the loan will be, 3.5% or 6% or whatever the bank tells you, whatever the rate is at that time. Okay, and so if you're a good customer that usually has, paid their loans on time and you have a good credit score and things like that, your APR is going to be lower. If you have a bad credit score and things like that, your APR is going to be higher. So you want a low APR because you're not getting charged as much interest. Okay. So for any loan, you want to make sure you understand those 3 parts of it. Okay. The principal, the annual percentage rate, and the maturity date or the term of the loan. Okay. If you don't know those things, then you're really going to be confused when you see your bank statement each month and you don't know how much is going to pay for the loan, right? So make sure you understand those 3 things. Okay. So why does the bank loan you this money, right? It's because they're going to make money off that interest. Okay, so we want to know how much we're actually going to pay on the loan, because if my loan's, let's say, $5,000, that doesn't mean I'm going to end up paying $5,000 in the long run. I'm going to pay more than that because the bank wants to make interest off of me, right? So we need to calculate what we call the loan total. Okay, and here is the formula for the loan total. Okay, so the loan total, or how much I actually pay on a loan, is the payment amount, okay, or how much my monthly payment is. Okay, so let's say I pay $200 each month for the car loan. Okay, then I times that by the time of the loan in years. Okay, so let's say it's a 5-year loan. That would be 5, and then I have to pay that payment each month, so I times it by 12. Okay, so the simple idea is how much is your monthly payment times by how many times you're going to pay it. Okay, that's your loan total. So if we want to write that as a shorthand, we can write it, I write it as LT for loan total equals 12 times the amount times the time. Okay, let me label those for you really quick just to make sure we got that down. Okay, and again, this is just my notation. This isn't necessarily the same for everyone that writes this formula, but basically it's the loan total, okay, times 12 times the payment amount, okay, or how much I'm paying each month, times the time in years. Okay. So loan total is 12 times the amount times t, okay, which basically means how much am I paying each month and how many months am I paying it for. Okay. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and try a problem. So let's do this one right here. So Sonia takes out a loan for $5,000. The loan term is 4 years with monthly payments of $118. How much will the loan total be? Okay. So it tells us the principal right here. Okay, the loan was for $5,000. That's the principal of the loan, or how much it was for. Okay. It tells us the time in years. Okay, so that's going to be T. And then it tells us the amount of the payments. Okay. So for this problem, we actually don't need to know the principal. Okay, that's not important to the loan total. We'll use that in a second. But to figure out the loan total, all we have to do is find the monthly payment and times it by the time in years. Okay, and then times that by 12. So remember that the loan total was 12 times A times T. Okay. So in this case, A was $118. And the time was 4 years. Okay. So we're going to take out our calculator. In this case, I'm using my phone. But we do 12 times 118 times 4. And we find that the loan total was $5,664. Okay. So in reality, I didn't pay $5,000 for the loan, or Sonia didn't take out the $5,000 loan. She had to end up paying She ended up paying $5,664 because the bank wanted to make that interest. Okay, so even though she gets $5,000, she has to pay back $5,664. Okay, and so that's the actual total, or the loan total. Okay, again, this isn't how much she gets. This is how much she ends up having to pay. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. Go ahead and try this problem on your own. Willie takes out a loan for his car that is $8,500. The loan term is 5 years with monthly payments of $190. How much will the loan total be? Okay. So I'll go ahead and give you about 3 minutes to try this one on your own. Okay. Oops. There we go. All right. Okay, let's see what you got. So we know that the loan principal is $8,500. In this case, we don't really need this information, but we do know that the loan term is 5 years, so that's going to be T. And then we know that the monthly payments are $190, or the amount is $190. Okay? So we plug that into our equation. Loan total equals 12 times the loan amount times the time in years. In this case, that's going to be 12 times the amount, which is $190, times the time in years, which is 5. Okay, so we put that into our calculators, and you get that that is equal to $11,400. Okay. So hopefully you got that right. And again, just think about this. Okay. Willie took out this loan for $8,500. That's how much money he got. In the end, he had to pay $11,400. Okay, so he had to pay quite a bit to actually get the loan. Okay, that's why it's important to understand your things like your APR and your monthly payments and stuff. And that's why it's good to do this calculation before you actually get a loan, so you can see how much am I actually paying on this. Okay, so really quickly, another calculation we can do that just needs one more step. Okay, is to figure out how much are you actually paying extra. Okay, and to do that, we just find the interest paid, and it's really simple. We just calculate what we found before, the loan total, and just minus our initial principal. Okay, so the interest paid, or how much interest you end up paying on the loan, is just the loan total minus the amount you got, or the principal. Okay, and again, I will notate it like this: the interest paid equals loan total minus principal. Okay. So this is interest paid, that's the loan total, and that's the principal. Okay, so basically the exact same thing we were doing before. You just calculate loan total the same way, but then you just minus the principal that you got initially, so you can figure out how much you're actually paying extra for this loan, or basically how much the bank is making off that loan. Okay, so let's look at an example problem, just make sure we got this down. Okay. So same loan. Okay, Sonia takes out that loan for $5,000. The term is 4 years with monthly payments of $118. How much will Sonia pay in interest over the life of the loan? Okay, so we'd still find the loan total the same way like we did before. Again, that was loan total equals 12 times A times T. We did 12 times 118 times 4. Okay. And I believe that got us $5,664. Okay. So the last step to find the interest paid is all I got to do is I got to take this loan total and minus the principal. Okay, so that's why that is listed in this problem. So that's the principal right there. That's the loan total. I just take the difference between those two. Okay, so $5,664 minus $5,000 is going to tell me that my total interest paid was $664. Okay, so over the life of the loan, that's how much money extra I'm going to pay to the bank. I'm going to pay them all back, and I'm going to have to pay an extra $664 for this loan. Okay, so that's the interest paid. So you're just taking the loan total you got minus the principal, or the initial amount that you had. Okay, so loan total minus the principal gives you the interest paid. Okay, let's go back to Willie. Look at his situation again. So again, this was the principal. This was the life of the loan, which was 5 years, T. This was the amount, A. So we found the loan total by doing loan total equals 12 times the amount times the time in years, which gave us 12 times 190 times 5. And then when we calculated that all out, I forgot the exact number. Let me put it in my calculator again. So we got that was equal to $11,400. Okay, so that's how much he paid, or has to pay back to the bank. What he initially got was $8,500. So to find the interest paid, we just do the loan total minus the principal. Okay, so we do $11,000 minus $8,500. Okay, we put that in our calculator. And we get that the total interest that he has to pay to the bank was $2,900. Okay, that's a lot if you think about it. If you're only getting $8,500 and you're paying an extra $2,900, right? That's a pretty, it's not a terrible loan, but it's a pretty bad situation to be in, right? Because you have to pay a lot of extra money for something, okay, that only cost you a portion of that, right? So that's why you have to be really careful about loans, because if you can avoid them, then you don't have to pay all this extra interest. if you can't avoid them, then you could end up paying a lot more interest than you want to. Okay, that's why Benjamin Franklin said those that don't understand interest, pay it. Those that do understand interest, earn it. Okay, we want to be those that understand interest. Okay, we don't want to be those that don't understand it and end up paying a lot of it. Okay, so that's why you want to check your terms and understand how much interest are you going to end up paying in the long run. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and have you try one on your own. Okay. So let's have you do this problem right here. So Charlotte takes out a loan for a new boat, which is $25,000. The loan term is 6 years, the monthly payment of $430. How much will Charlotte pay in interest over the life of the loan? Okay, so first you gotta find the loan total and then minus off the principal. Okay, so again, go ahead. I'll give you about, let's do 4 minutes this time to make sure you got this down. Okay, so 4 minutes on the clock. Okay, go ahead and try this on your own. Okay. Let's see how we did. Okay, so we just need to identify what the problem is telling us. Okay, so the loan amount was for $25,000, so that's our principal. Okay, the term of the loan was 6 years, so that's T. And then the monthly payments were $430, so that's the amount. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, if we're trying to find the interest paid, the first thing we got to do is find the total amount paid, or the loan total. So loan total equals 12 times the amount times time. In this case, 12 times $430 times 6. Okay, that's going to tell us that the loan total is 12 times 430 times 6. Okay, or in other words, $30,960. Okay, so that's how much she's going to have to pay in the long run. So to find out how much interest she ends up paying, we just simply say that the interest paid is equal to the loan total minus the principal. So that's going to be $30,960 minus the initial loan amount, which was $25,000. Okay, so we minus $25,000 from that, and we get that she ends up paying $5,960 in interest. Okay, so there you go. So on a loan that's $25,000, she ends up paying $5,960 in interest, or about $6,000 in interest. Okay, so again, it's important to be able to understand how to calculate this and make sure that you're not paying too much in interest and trying to get the best deal you can if you're doing a loan. Okay, so that's our first type of calculation. So we have a loan, we have a payment amount, we want to find the loan total. Okay, now we're going to learn how to go the other way and find the monthly payment based on the loan. Okay, so if we're trying to find monthly payments, the key idea for a monthly payment is that we're going to pay off our interest first. Okay, that APR that the bank is charging you, okay, that annual percentage rate, is how much interest you have to pay each year. Okay, so for example, if the loan is for $1,000, and let's say you have a 3% interest rate, okay, that's pretty good, then that would mean that you have to pay 1,000 times 3%, or $30 in interest each year. Okay, that's really a small loan, not a big deal. But the point is, before we pay anything towards the principal amount or paying this off, we have to pay this interest first. Okay, so the key idea, each monthly payment is going to go towards the paying off the interest first, then go towards paying the principal. Okay, you have to pay the bank its interest before you can pay the principal, okay, or pay back the principal. Okay, so that what that means is there is a minimum monthly amount that must be paid in order to pay off the loan by the maturity date. Okay, so we want to be able to calculate this monthly payment, and it turns out it's a really complex system that they do called amortization that determines this minimum monthly payment. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to look at that 2 days down the road. But we can get a pretty dang good approximation, okay, of figuring out our minimum monthly payment. Okay, so the pretty dang good approximation that we're going to use is we have to be able to figure out, okay, our payment amount, okay, we'll call it A again, is basically going to be broken into two parts. We're going to pay off that interest first, right? And then we're going to have to pay off some principal. Okay. Well, if our amount is based into interest and principal, we can't pay off the entire amount for the year in one go, right? It's going to be broken up into 12 months. Okay. So basically the point is it's going to be the total interest plus the total principal over the number of times we have to pay it. Okay. So we're going to simplify some of these terms. Okay. So the amount that we have to pay I'm going to rewrite this as the principal plus the interest that we need to pay off over the number of times we pay it, which is just going to be 12 times t, right? Because we're going to pay it each month for the number of years that it is. Okay. We can simplify this further by writing the interest based on the simple interest formula. If you remember from last unit, the simple interest formula was the principal times the rate times the time. So there we go. Okay, if we think about it like this, basically you're paying off a chunk of the principal, you're paying off a chunk of the interest over the total life of the loan. This is how much your monthly payment amount is going to be. Okay, and again, this isn't going to be a perfect answer, but it's going to be a good approximation. Okay, so here's the official formula written down. Okay, the payment amount is equal to the principal of the entire loan plus the interest of the entire loan over the number of times we have to pay on the loan. Okay, so monthly amount or monthly payment, except I can't spell today, as we've already determined. So monthly payment or monthly amount is equal to the principal of the loan times the principal again times the rate, or how much the APR is, right? The rate in terms of the APR. So that percentage of interest you have to pay back. Then the time in years over 12 times the time in years. Okay. But again, so this doesn't make a lot of intuitive sense when it's written like this, but just think of it as we got to pay off a chunk of the principal, we got to pay off a chunk of the interest, okay, over that time. Okay. And so again, this isn't going to be the minimum monthly payment because of something that we'll talk about in a couple of days, but this is a pretty dang good approximation that we can use to figure out how much your monthly payment's going to be. Okay. It's going to be a little bit of an overestimate, but pretty dang close. Okay. So let's go ahead and try a problem. Let me give you about 30 seconds to write that down. Okay. But this is going to be nice, okay, because when you go in to a loan or into a bank to get a loan and you're trying to figure out, can you afford that loan, you can do this calculation right here and figure out how much you're going to be paying on it. What's your monthly payment going to be before you go in? And you can say, well, if the rate's going to be too high, then I can't afford it. If the rate's going to be lower, then I probably can. And you can figure out this monthly payment. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and try one. Okay, so Justin takes out a car loan for $14,000. If his loan has an APR of 3% and a term of 5 years, what is the monthly payment going to be? Okay, so again, this is a real situation, right? You probably will take out a car loan sometime in your life, and you'll know the APR that the bank's going to offer you, and you're going to know the term of the loan. You can figure out beforehand how much you're probably going to be paying a month. Okay. But anyways, we need to identify some things. So that's the principal or the amount of the loan. The APR is 3%, so that's the rate, and the time is 5 years. Okay. So we write down our formula. The payment amount or the monthly payment is going to be the principal plus the principal times the rate times the time over 12 times the time in years. Okay. So the principal amount was $1,400 or $14,000 plus 14,000 times the rate, which is 0.03. Oops, there we go. 0.03 times the life of the loan, which is 5 years, all over 12 times 5. Okay? So, looks like a lot of steps, but we're going to get into a very simple calculation. Let's simplify some things really quick. So, the bottom right here, 12 times 5, well, that's going to be the same as 60. Right? There's going to be 60 payments. So that's going to be 60. Let's simplify this guy right here. So 14,000 times 0.03 times 5. It's going to give us $2,100. All right, and then now we can probably plug that in. So if we do that on our calculator, that's 14,000 plus 2,100, okay, divided by 60. Okay, when we do all that and we put it in our calculator, we get that the monthly payment will be $268. about, and 33 cents to be very specific, okay? But that's approximately the monthly payment that you're going to see, okay? So if Justin takes out this car loan, he can expect to pay $268 a month on the car, okay? All right, so I'm going to give you a second. Make sure you get that in your calculator. There's a lot of places that this can go wrong on the calculator. Again, I recommend just kind of simplifying beforehand like I did right here so that you don't get the wrong answer, okay? Take about a minute though. Make sure that you're getting 268.33 when you plug this all into your calculator, okay? Because I know calculators work differently. Use parentheses if you need to, that type of thing, okay? Oh, and also another big error. A lot of people add this principal and this principal together and then times the whole thing together. Make sure you're only timesing these guys right here, okay? Only timesing that, okay? Not that extra principal. Some people make the mistake to times again, or they add it into the timesing, okay? Just make sure you times them separately, okay? Alrighty, so let's go ahead and have you guys try one on your own to make sure you got it down. Okay, so Heidi takes out a personal loan for $5,500. If her loan has an APR of 6.5% and a term of 6 years, what is the monthly payment going to be? Okay, so I'll give you, again, about 4 minutes on this one. And so make sure you can figure out the monthly payment. Okay, your time starts now. All right. So let's make sure you got it right. So she takes out a personal loan for $5,500. Okay, so that's the principal of the loan. The loan has a rate of 6.5%, and the time is 6 years. Okay, so we got to write down our formula. Make sure you have this written down somewhere because I'm pretty sure you don't have this memorized. But the monthly payment amount is going to be equal to the principal plus the interest, which is principal times rate times time, over 12t. Okay. Plug in everything. So the principal is $5,500. The interest paid is, the principal is going to be $5,500 again, times the interest rate, which is 0.065, times the time in years, which is 6, all over 12 times 6. Okay, so we can do some simplification. 12 times 6 is going to be 72 payments. Okay. Let's simplify that top really quick. So that's going to be 5,500 times 0.065 times 6. Okay. So that's going to give us 2,145. Okay, now we can probably simplify that. So we're putting in our calculator. So 5,500 plus 2,145 all over 72 tells us that the monthly payment for the loan is going to be around $106. Okay, 106.18 to be exact. Okay. So there we go. So we can figure out the monthly payment. So a loan that is for $5,500 at a rate of 6.5% for 6 years is going to cost you $106 a month. Okay? Alrighty, so just keep that formula in mind the next time you buy a car so you can get a good idea of how much it's going to cost you each month. Okay? But again, last key idea is that this is not the exact amount. Okay? The actual method for calculating monthly payments is going to be a little bit lower. This method's a slight overestimation, this one I'm showing you. Okay, it's pretty dang good approximation, but it's a slight overestimation because of something called amortization. Okay, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, about 2 days from now, or 2 lessons from now. Okay, but it's so close when it comes to figuring out how much you're going to be paying on a loan. You can pretty much use it without worrying. Okay, but again, just keep that in mind. It's not really the minimum payment. It's slightly above. Okay, but that's it for the lesson. Okay, so the rest of the time is yours to work on the homework 4.1. Because the computers aren't out right now, you can turn this printed copy in if you finish before class is over. That's fine with me. Okay. All right, so make sure to keep working on this for the rest of class. And we'll talk about any questions you guys have next time. Until then, have a good one. See ya.